Alrighty, so Gamma, how did we get here? So the company started in 2020. We started right in the depths of the pandemic. I'm sure you all remember what year 2020 was like. Mine was not fun in a lot of ways, but starting a startup was one of the bright spots and one of the really cool things that happened in that year. And Gamma really came out of the wreckage of another startup called Optimizely. They might be familiar with Optimizely. A couple folks used it. So Optimizely was A/B testing you'll actually use. It was the first startup I worked at after starting my career at Microsoft. I basically wanted to come to Silicon Valley and be part of all the real interesting stuff happening here. And after spending 7 years at Optimizely, the company ended up getting acquired by a PE firm. It was not the acquisition a lot of us hoped for. And so unfortunately, almost everybody left Optimizely and was looking for a new gig, which was actually an incredible opportunity to start a company because I had this unique chance to scoop up a lot of really amazing people that I'd worked with before and start something new. And so our original team of 6 at Optimizely had actually all worked together at that company for more than 5 years together. So it was an amazing base of just sort of like trust that we were beginning from. And that team we started with had a mix of skill sets, but I would say the sort of like core sweet spot of it was UX design, front-end engineering, application design. We were all people who'd been building this sort of like visual point-and-click editor at Optimizely, really knew web technology very well. Almost all of our skills were on kind of the product development side. And then my co-founder Grant had more of the sort of like business skill set, done a little sales, but in general, we were not coming from like enterprise sales world in terms of our individual roles. We were very producty folks. And that informed the kind of company we wanted to build. One kind of just general lesson I'll try to leave you with is that choosing the right problem to work on is at least as important as executing well on that problem. And right or wrong problem is partly about, is it a good business objectively? But I think just as much of that, it's about, is it a good problem for you to work on? This is the thing that you personally want to sink the next decade of your life into. And if not, how could you either change your idea or find a part of your idea that is the thing you want to sink a decade of your life into? Because that's what's likely to happen. You're going to be spending a lot of your time and your soul on it. And so we kind of had this spark of an idea at the very beginning to focus on presentations. There's actually a slide from our original pre-seed pitch deck where we tried to set the stage of presentations, the thing that you're all sitting through right now. And what drew me to it was that presentations are this ubiquitous business process. We all probably make presentations and sit through presentations every week. The stats are pretty insane in terms of almost 1 billion people making presentations every month. Microsoft Office is obviously a huge business. But if you think about the process of making presentations and sitting through them, hopefully not this one, they feel more like this. They can be immensely frustrating to build. There's a lot of stress and strain that goes into designing all the slides and laying them out and figuring out what to say. And for all of us who are sitting through the presentation, there's often like boredom, frustration, fatigue. And so I was really drawn to this idea of work on a big, vast, pre-existing problem where people are not super thrilled with the existing solutions. So that's kind of what drew us here. Some other reasons to believe. By the way, almost all the images here are AI generated, so you'll notice some weird stuff, but I couldn't find I loved the horizontal appeal of presentations, meaning that many different user personas all make them. I mentioned this morning that every VC told us, no, you got to pick one customer, pick one ICP. We kind of never did, and at least in our case, it worked out well. We were deliberately horizontal. And we knew that if we won, we could have millions and millions of people use our products. I also liked that it aligned itself well to a product-led growth model, which I think fit our strengths very well. Not all companies should be PLG, but if your strength is really in product development and that's where you shine, I would go PLG. That's the thing that most aligns with your abilities. And I like that it was an established use case, and we could win not by inventing a new behavior, but taking something people already do and just make it better. That also, I felt, really suited me and my skills. But there were also a lot of reasons to not believe. A lot of scary parts. I recently heard the term tar pit idea to describe startups. A classic example of the tar pit idea is like cool note-taking app or like waiting it up with your friends in New York. Like every startup founder wants to make one of these and they pretty much all fail, and VCs don't want to fund them because they've seen it end too many times. And presentations were kind of flirting with this because many other tools had come along and not really displaced PowerPoint. A stat I learned in the part of starting the company was the PowerPoint was first created in 1987. So it's probably older than many folks in this room. And it's never really been displaced. Keynote came along and kind of extended it to Macs. Google Slides has become another dominant competitor, but never really replaced PowerPoint, just grew alongside it. Other tools like Prezi came along, maybe we all used them in the 2010s, but also never really replaced it. And part of the reason is that PowerPoint is part of the suite. And so people are not just buying PowerPoint, they're buying Word and Excel and all of this, or they're buying Google Slides because they really want Gmail and it comes for free. And so it is the startup graveyard where most companies in this space had died. And what we were trying to do was not just make another PowerPoint editor or say Keynote. We were trying to induce a paradigm shift. Our whole idea was that if you sort of go back to this picture of the world, it was this very 1987 view of how meetings and presentations happen. Kind of like this one now, where it's all in person with like a guy standing in front of the room pointing at a screen, which does happen from time to time. But if you think about most presentations you were in recently, they don't take that form. They're much more informal. They're usually more of a two-way conversation. And when we started the company in 2020, we were all in this vast transition to remote work, where we were seeing new tools like Loom and Slack spring up and see huge success by taking this existing category and rethinking it at just the right time. And so our bet was that this could also be that right time for us. That's why it felt worth kind of getting into this scary space. And so the place that we started was a huge amount of user research. We talked to 100 people who had all made presentations before, which was really easy to find in our network because almost everyone we know made presentations. That alone felt like validation. And we asked what was hard about that? What did you not like? I'll share a bit more of what we heard, but it was very consistent. And then we got in the mode of prototyping almost immediately. Like, let's just make some ideas and see how they feel. And all these prototypes were so bad that I would never expect even a real user to try and use them as a product, but we tried to use them ourselves. Dogfooding is a big part of our story. We really believe in using something while it's crappy to get an intuitive feel for whether this could actually be a replacement for what came before. And as part of that user research we did, there were these 3 really clear customer problems that came out from almost everyone, regardless of sort of persona or background. The biggest one was formatting. People spend all their time making their slides look good, and they say, after 80% of my time goes into that, there's 20% to actually focus on the content. And the reason they have to do that is that if they don't spend all their time making it look good, then nobody pays attention, or they're judged for how it looks, not what they actually said. And if you kind of take this 5 whys idea, or 3 whys in this case, and go one layer deeper, a lot of that comes from what a structure of a PowerPoint is. PowerPoint is this linear sequence of 16 by 9 slides that you go through one by one, where you have to sort of fill space with colorful clip art to keep people's attention. And the task of making that is not something that most of us are really trained to do. Many of us learn to write in English class, but we don't generally learn to design rectangles in any of our classes. And many of us run screaming the opposite direction in art class when we had to do things like that. That was kind of the opportunity that we saw. And these 3 problems became our North Star and actually still are. So even 4 years in, they haven't really changed in terms of the biggest problems that we hear about from people and focus on. So going into our first full year as a company, our big project was to create a private beta. Our first prototype was actually our pitch deck. This is a little GIF of what our original pitch deck looks like. Our pitch deck was a demo. That's nice when you're a slides product that you can do that. And the idea was a hybrid document and slide deck where you could have detailed information for sort of the reader, but flip over to slides mode off of the same content. We don't know how we would achieve that, but it was easy to make a demo and sort of show it off. And by 2021, it evolved to an alternative idea of really focusing on asynchronous communication. So something in between document and slides that could be visual, but also shared before a meeting or after it. We actually leaned on the word memo a lot. This was a strategy doc I made called Modernize the Memo, because we were in this period in 2021 when we thought remote work was here to stay forever, and everybody would be moving to a writing culture, not a presentation culture. This turned out to be totally wrong, but still it's where we started, and it was our guiding light for that first year. And the thing we did was prototype and dog food over and over. If anybody doesn't know the expression dog fooding, it comes from the phrase eat your own dog food. The idea being that if you run a dog food factory, even if you're a human, you still need to actually sample it and see what you're feeding these dogs, just to know what you're dealing with. I've heard some people don't like this term and prefer a term like drink your own champagne. I think it's totally wrong. I think the whole point is that it tastes like shit. And I think champagne tastes pretty good. So I don't think it's the right analog. We made ourselves use our product while it was really, really bad. And we lived in it every day. We created reasons to actually use presentations. So one example of this is we created a cultural tradition at Gamma called Gamma, where every week somebody gives a little mini TED talk about a weird hobby of theirs, like woodworking or sewing or the McRib or whatever it is, and presents to the team. And our earliest ones of these were terrible. Our product didn't even have pictures in it. So it would just be a blown up text on a screen and you would talk. But the point was to make ourselves use the product every day and see and feel it get better all through that process. In 2021, we got our very first users by getting ourselves in TechCrunch. So we used our investors for this to sort of like post about us on Twitter. We announced our fundraise and got a TechCrunch article about us. We just put up a landing page that was nothing more than a sign-up form. So it was maybe like a cool picture and a sign-up form. And we actually got something like 1,000 people to sign up for our very vague product just based on the investor buzz. Investors saying like, yeah, this is the coolest thing ever. It definitely wasn't. They hadn't even seen it, but they were nice enough to say that. And now we had a waitlist, and that was key because a waitlist let us go beyond dogfooding to bringing real people into our products. And from there, we got in a mode of doing weekly onboarding. So we took that list of 1,000 and said, every week, 25 new people are going to get access to Gamma. That became our North Star as a company. It's like, what's going to go in this week that the next 25 people will get that the last 25 people didn't have? What did we learn from last week's 25 that we can do for this week? And just because we're being real here, of 25 we would invite, only 5 would actually even like log in and do anything. But even those 5, if 5 people logged in and 2 of them even did something and the other 3 didn't, we actually had like heat mapping and screen recording. So we would even see what they do when they logged in. And we get just like a little morsel of feedback every week we would use to inform the next week as we went. We collected all the feedback. I also automatically emailed everyone who got it a week after they got there and just said how it's going. I even had a canned email that just said, it sounds like it wasn't a fit. Why not? And I just said that to everyone because I just assumed it wasn't a fit for anyone. Waiting to see what I would get. A lot of people were very kind and would send like real feedback on why it didn't fit. And it was enough to just start getting patterns. We would do things that don't scale. We would make presentations for them. We'd say, do you have a presentation you're working on? We'll make it good. It was all about just getting some early sign of direction at this phase. And that was a whole year long that was basically just that. It was really pure product iteration. No sales to speak of, no marketing. We did try to beef up that wait list a bit more. We got up to 2,000, but all we were doing was iterating on product, taking our own dogfooding feedback and customer feedback and trying to turn it into something a little better every day. Which led us eventually in, I think, fall of 2022 to getting ready to do our public beta. So at this point, actually 2 years have gone by since we started the company. We've made product progress, but we have nothing that you can call traction whatsoever because we've only ever onboarded a total of 1,000 people. And of those, probably no more than 20 or 30 have ever stuck around to become real users of the products. But it's okay because we were dogfooding and saw the progress every day. And we've seen enough consistent themes to know where the signals were pointing. And so we felt more confident in what to build. We started to get some external validation. So even if 20 people would like your product, that's enough to hear them say like, oh, this is really cool. Luckily, we're still in the rosy fundraising era of 2021. So we've been able to raise money and hire a team up to 12. I'm saying this would be a lot harder now, but we were lucky and we were able to do it. And we decided to launch on Product Hunt. So the first thing I did was set a deadline of August 2022. We're launching on Product Hunt. We had a very meticulous strategy on how to do this that involved warming up various previous Product Hunt launchers, building up a lot of enthusiasm, using our email list of all those people that we previously reached out to, also all of our friends and network. We actually wrote a whole guide on this, so we'll send out the slides after and you can find the link to this guide, but it covers basically everything that we did here. And this ended up going really well for us. I would say better than we expected. We ended up winning #1 product of the day, week, and even month, which was really cool. I think that's partly a testament to the product, but more a testament to just how much work we put into making that launch a success. So much non-scalable human work of like emailing everyone over news saying, hey, pretty please, could you sign into this app and push the orange button and say, upload us? Trying to get our message right, which we'd refined over all those onboarding sessions. But this was a huge boost of excitement and energy for the team, huge boost of usage and metrics. Before this happened, we were getting around 100 people signing up for Gamma every week, which again was some signal, but it really is not that much. So as you can see here, we saw a pretty major boost up to a point we were getting something like 3,000 people signing up every week for Gamma, which was really amazing. 3,000 people is like, you just picture like this room times like all the other rooms on this floor and like those people are signing up to try your product. That's like amazing. That's really cool. Now, still like 98% of them would log in and push a few buttons and then leave. So that part sucked. But still, there's some kind of validation here. As you can also see from this graph, though, it was not a forever up and to the right woohoo situation, though. It was an initial peak after launch and then a plateau, but a plateau of 2,000 signups a day. So It's not nothing, but it's also not liftoff necessarily. It's this weird in-between zone. And I think many startups struggle with falling into this in-between zone of sort of like in the middle, in between traction. So on the left, you can see all the things that made us feel good. And on the right, all the things that made us feel bad at this point. We literally 30x'd our sign-up rate. I mean, people from all different personas signing up for our products. We had a lot of really positive feedback we were getting, and it was pointing to ways to improve. I still had automated emails going out to every single person who signed up saying what went wrong. And I was getting more saying, actually didn't go wrong. I liked it. So that was cool to hear. And also a lot that were saying, I tried it, but it's not a fit for me right now. But I did like these two things. I was relentless at sharing that with our team. Somebody asked me earlier today, how do you sort of keep your team's spirit up when you're not selling and you don't actually have a lot of traction and you're in this sort of like lonely search for a product? And for me, it was all about spreading that positive customer feedback. I made sure that every week our team heard 5 or 10 positive things that were going well. And we were getting some diehard fans out of this. We had a small number of true believers. And when I say small number, I think like maybe 10 to 15 people who like really got it and really believed and were telling their friends. Nothing to really write home about, but still, like it felt good to us. But then there was also the red side of the equation and all the negatives over here, which is that our growth had sort of leveled off after that initial jump. It was not growing exponentially. We still had no monetization, so there's no money coming in the door. These people are trying it for free, but I doubt basically any of them would have paid at this stage. We had a pretty low activation rate. So of every 100 people who would sign up, less than 10 would really hit our initial bar of activation, which for us was spending 10 distinct minutes of editing in our products. We took that to mean basically, are you just poking around or are you actually making something real? And if we were being honest, that bar might have been higher, maybe not 10, but like 30 minutes. But 10 was something and 10% was very low enough that it distinguished the people. And so the takeaway was most users either don't like it or maybe just don't get it. They don't really understand the value prop of this. And it was a hard value prop to convey. We were still in this in-between of like, it's kind of a memo and kind of a presentation. There's bits of the web page in there and, oh, it's interactive and really easy to do. But they would log in and just see a blank canvas and a very short video of what we were trying to do. And most people just didn't have the patience to get over that hump to even say like, oh, what should I do here? And so it was hard to say if we were doing well or not doing well. But even if we were in between, the world around us started to get really scary. AI generated this picture of me stressing. A lot like me. Stressing over presentations, by the way, which I really like. So the fundraising market by that time gone from really rosy to actually pretty brutal and scary. This is late 2022 going into 2023. Interest rates had gone up. Tech was starting to do layoffs. And then in, I think next January or February, Silicon Valley Bank collapsed. And suddenly all of our money was tied up and could we even make payroll? Our runway was starting to get shorter. So we had about 18 months of runway left at the time of our product hunt launch. And we'd always heard the rule of thumb of you kind of want to have a year left when you fundraise, which basically means we had this 6-month ticking clock in our heads to get the traction. And investors were saying, good for you for getting like product of the day, but like this isn't working. They were actually pretty candid with us. And I think they were so candid because of the financial downturn. I actually think if we'd still been in the rosy times, they would have said, great work, this is amazing, awesome progress, thumbs up. But this is the kind of the story of selling. When you're actually going back asking for more money, they're saying, actually, this isn't working. I don't think this is going to make it. They really pushed us to focus on one vertical, pick one persona, this horizontal software thing that works. And we were at the point of having to make some very hard decisions in the next 6 months. We could refocus our sort of personas. We could pivot the product entirely to something that could be stickier, or we could cut our team to extend our runway. None of which I was excited about, and some made me sick to my stomach thinking about in terms of what they would mean. So even though we had these positive signs of traction that felt really good, we also had this big feeling of fear. And even among our 3 founders, we kind of cycled between self-confidence and self-doubt, often on different days of the week. It's like, oh, we totally believe we see these signals, versus like, this thing's not going to make it. We just be honest with ourselves about it. But at the same time, a lot was happening in the world around us, not just financially. And the big thing that was happening was AI was just starting to become this mega trend. So the same month that we launched on Product Hunt, Stable Diffusion came out. Luckily not on the same day on Product Hunt, or we would have gotten crushed. And I remember seeing people talk about Stable Diffusion on Twitter and making this ridiculous AI art, often pretty porny AI art, but still, like people were really, really talking about it and getting into it for the first time. So it kind of caught our attention because they were grounded in these customer problems. One of the biggest problems is decorating these slides is like a huge pain in the ass. And you'll see now this is AI generated, and I think it did a pretty good job decorating my slide. Like we saw that glimmer even 2 years ago that AI could help a lot with this core problem. And so we actually started prototyping that September, just playing with like, what could AI look like inside of Gamma, while also fearing like, what do we have to pivot and change everything? Then in November, ChatGPT came out. You probably all remember, anybody who works in tech remembers when ChatGPT came out, because it felt like such a sea change. It felt like it was going to change everything, and it blew up like no consumer product I've ever seen before. And what stuck out to me was that the thing ChatGPT was really good at was sort of this creative writing and iterative refinement, going back and forth in a conversation to make something better. I remember someone posted it like writing a poem about getting a grilled cheese sandwich stuck in a VCR, and it just nailed it. And I was like, oh my God, if it can do this, it can make a presentation. That's like way easier than what it's doing. And so in parallel with existential freakout, we also started prototyping with AI to just see what could this mean for us? Kind of going back to our roots from that first year of just making really lame prototypes, very minimal fidelity, and grounding it in those first customer problems we heard from those first 100 people we talked to. We tried building a sort of template builder where you could say, give me a modern look and feel. I want it to be purple. We prototyped a whole presentation generator where you would give it a topic and it would outline 10 slides for you. And then we made this crazy thing of like slide chat where essentially it would be like a designer who lived in the app with you, and you could say, make it more visual, or like make this horizontal, and it would try to do it for you. All these prototypes had to be code prototypes because they used AI. They couldn't just be like Figma rectangles. They had to actually show what was really possible with real AI as it was, even though it was slow and expensive. It like had to be real. And we started getting really excited about this even before we showed it to users. It was just so clear there was something here, and so clear that this was going to blow up. Like something was going to happen here. And so going back to our existential dread, we ended up deciding to sort of make this one big bet on AI and throw the Hail Mary, meaning we would not cut our team, we would not pivot, we would put 100% of our resources into basically one big life or death launch. And if it worked, we would probably have, in our mind, success was we launched something cool on the scale of our product hunting. You get a couple more thousand signups, and VCs are so impressed by AI in general that they take a bet on us and give us enough bridge as a lifeline that we can keep going. That was what life meant. Death was we launch, it's not that exciting, and we just have to shut the whole thing down because at that point, there's not really enough money in the bank to do much else with this business. So we gave ourselves 3 months. We decided on a March launch. Part of why we chose March and not later, even though we felt 6 months of runway before we had to fundraise, was that we just assumed that everybody would do this. We were sure that Google Slides would have their cool AI and PowerPoint would have their cool AI. And there was a narrow window of time, honestly, for us to just impress investors while it was still novel before that would come out. And so we had to rush. It was totally all hands on deck. And also, yeah, this race against time. We just didn't know how long we'd have or when competitors. So that was the mindset. And what's interesting is this period of time of existential angst was probably the most productive and fun part of the whole experience of working on the company. And I think there is a lesson there about being candid with your team about when it's time to put it all on the line. I think it's a card you can only play so many times. And we had to play it. We had no choice. But we had a huge blitz of development. So this is taking us into now early 2023. We did this huge feature blitz. And you won't know what all these features mean, but these are all the things that we built in the space of 6 months. And suffice to say that each one is now considered by our users like a major core feature. In fact, we actually ran a survey of customers of like stack rank our features and like where would you rank them? And these 6 things that we built in these 3 months were like 6 of the top 8 or something. So again, the do or die mentality sort of clarifies what you have to do in that moment. And looking back, we wasted a lot of the previous 2 years not being quite as focused. We didn't have the knife to our throat. But so you could like visually style your presentation with different themes. We had these like easy smart layouts, which is this thing you see here with these icons on it. We had the AI that would take your prompt and build a presentation, which started as a prototype. We actually had a version of the AI chat, which is still in our product, where you can say, redesign this for me, please. We had card layouts, which is basically this picture you see up here where you would have a slide with like a splashy image on it. And we made PDF export work because the biggest thing we heard from those emails I was sending on feedback was your tool's a nice little island, but if I can't get off the island, I can never really use this at work. And so we basically just jammed it all in. Many of these things were quite half-assed, but we got them to the point where they all worked and did something. We also did a real marketing blitz. The first time we really leaned into marketing. So we made a launch video, which our one designer, Melissa, just poured her heart and soul into. She actually made it in Figma, which is not what you should make a launch video in, but it's what she knew when we had a deadline. Our launch video totally oversold what the product could actually do. It leaned into the future, not like impossibly far, but it definitely showed stuff we couldn't do at a quality level we couldn't do, at a speed we couldn't do. And I think I would have been squeamish about that the year before, but it was that or the company explodes. So then it was an easy choice. We did our best to reach out to influencers. There was already by that March this category of AI influencer who was just desperate for cool AI content to talk about to like, dominate the Twitter airwaves. We did email blasts to, again, all the users we'd ever gotten, all of our investors, our network, just saying, please, 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 just one more favor, retweet this. And we did our best to make our social posts deliberately provocative. So I'll just actually read the whole tweet that we spent hours workshopping. The most valuable skill in business is about to become obsolete. Designing a killer slide deck used to take days. Now, AI can do it in seconds for anyone. Introducing Gamma, your AI design partner for presenting ideas beautifully. Launching today at Gamma.app. And that first sentence was the one that we really focused on, really these first two. This statement is not true, I would say. Like, everything about it is wrong. Like, I don't actually think that making slides is the most valuable skill. And as you can see from me right here, it's not really that obsolete either. We're still doing it. Designing a killer slide deck used to take days. Still true. Now AI can do it in seconds for anyone. Not really true. Slightly true. Directionally, maybe true, but not actually true. The rest was all real, and it was true. But we really leaned into it. And again, I was squeamish about it, but this really paid off for us, as I'll share in a minute. So finally, launch day came along. It was really stressful because I think we all knew just what an existential bet this was going to be in terms of like what it meant for the company. Actually, it was supposed to be March 27th, and forget something went wrong with like the video we were working on. So we had to push it a day, and it was March 28th. We launched, we did the big bang. We emailed all of our friends and family and everybody who had ever touched Gamma in any form and said, please, please, please share this. We got it live and it went okay. That first day, I think we got like a couple hundred likes or something. We got maybe like a couple thousand views. We did get more signups to our product, more than we gotten on the product hunt thing, but it was still on the order of thousands of people. And then it just kind of felt like, that was like a Wednesday or whatever. And then Thursday came along and it was like another day. And I remember driving home that day and feeling kind of deflated. Like our team was really jazzed, but I just felt like this wasn't it. Like we didn't have quite enough juice here for it to really take off. But then an interesting thing happened, which is a few days later that weekend, our tweet blew up. And one of the reasons that our tweet blew up was actually that Paul Graham retweeted this post and basically said, this is bullshit. Like this is not the most valuable skill in business, and it's not becoming obsolete. Psychology. A bunch of like tech people started piling on and saying like just how wrong this was. And every time they did, we started getting thousands more and retweets and posts about it. And more of the AI influencers that we desperately pinged finally picked up our video a few days later. And so starting actually that weekend, we started getting more traction and more people started posting about us. And so I describe what happened next as gradual liftoff. So the controversy happens, it gets more attention, influencers start getting in there. And then most interestingly, we start seeing more virality in the product itself. So this experience we created of generating a deck on the fly and showing it to you was actually a little bit magical. People thought it was cool and they started reposting it organically. But it didn't happen overnight. I would say it actually happened over a period of like 2 months. But the most important thing that happened was that we were still alive. After a period where we thought we might be dead, it turns out we were still in business. And even though I kept thinking we were going to die, we would get just a little bit more usage or a little bit more interest or whatever it was. It would pile on. And our metrics eventually started growing enough that we actually were able to do a very small fundraise. Not from any institutional VC, none of them wanted any part of this yet, but our existing investors put a little money, and we found angel investors who were interested. And I think it was like enough to extend our runway by like another 6 months or a year or something. But still, we were in the game, still going. And then what happened was a bunch of stuff kept happening, and I was like, wait a second, this kind of smells like product market fit. We had more pull in the product of people demanding more features and saying like, hey, why can't it do this or that? They started telling their friends. I started noticing people putting up with our product despite what I would call very glaring issues. Like it would take a minute and a half to actually generate anything, during which you just stared at a loading spinner and nothing would happen. Not the best user experience. People started using our product outside the US, in other countries, and our product didn't work in any of those countries. Not only was the product not localized in the sense of the UI, but our AI was only generating in English, and they were still doing it, and then writing frustrated intercom tickets to us saying, why doesn't it work in Spanish or Portuguese or Chinese or whatever? I, at the time, was doing all of our support, so I was on intercom every day, and I suddenly found myself still spending like 10 minutes every week on intercom to like an hour every day on intercom answering questions, which was not fun in the moment, but it's like there's nowhere you have to step outside yourself and say like, wait a second, that thing that's happening to you there is actually success. There's people using your product, putting up with all the problems with it, and like persevering despite it. And the most surprising one was they suddenly started asking to pay for it. So even after all this time, existential dread, we're going to go out of money, we still hadn't actually started monetizing. And the reason for that is that I didn't actually think that we were going to make much money off of it. And so why monetize if you're all going to make, like a couple $10,000 when we needed millions of dollars to keep operating? I mentioned this morning that I actually regret that in retrospect. I think we probably should have started earlier just from a learning perspective, but I was thinking from a money-making perspective. But suddenly at this point, I was getting all these people saying, hey, how do I buy it? I want to buy more credits. I want to do more AI. Where's the button to buy more? So we frantically shipped a Stripe integration and got that all working. But it was like one of those obvious in retrospect things. And what's happened since then has just been this totally gradual incremental liftoff, which has now totally surpassed my expectations. So we ended up getting to 3 million signups in the first 3 months, not in any one moment, but just very, very gradual. And that's just kept on going ever since incrementally to these numbers that I now find totally bananas. So 25 million people have signed up, which basically means like 100,000 people have signed up a day. That basically looked like 1,000 a day, and then 2,000 a day, and then 3,000 a day, just going up every few days for a year. 100 million presentations created, also bananas. We started monetizing, and it worked. It worked better than I ever thought it would work. People actually pay for AI more than they pay for regular software. And ironically, we got to the point where we didn't actually ever need that next round of VC money because we became profitable from monetizing. And so it was a true hockey stick of like, nothing, danger, dead zone. Oh my gosh, Liftoff. But it had been building for a long time. And so I think I'm almost done with my time, but I'll just share a few lessons that I learned from this process. One of them is that you have to focus on your strengths. So I think we had a good idea of what we were good at and not good at. And we chose a problem that, if it succeeded, would align very well with our strengths. I describe this next one as use your luck. So we only succeeded because of luck. Our original strategy did not work. Our investors told us it's not working. And if essentially OpenAI hadn't launched ChatGPT when it did, our business never would have succeeded. In fact, 3 days before our launch, OpenAI decided to cut the price of GPT-3 by 90%. So also that hadn't happened, we would have run out of money in a different way when all these people signed up. It was just complete pure luck, but we used it. We seized the opportunity as early as we could. We bet big on it. And we had built the scaffolding for years that let us seize that opportunity. And last, trust your original vision and be okay with failing if it doesn't work out. We made the choice not to pivot, not to cut the team, not to do it. And I think in like 9 worlds out of 10, that was probably the wrong decision. We got lucky and lived in the 1 world out of 10 where it was the right decision. But that one only worked because we did fully trust ourselves and make that bet. And that's the story. Thank you.